What does home really mean? Is it a place that you can point to on a map? Or is it something much more personal, something that you carry inside of you? I've asked myself that question so many times while traveling, and the more I wander, the more I realize that home isn't just where you live, it's where you feel whole. Home is a feeling of being understood without needing to explain a single thing. It's the comfort of familiar voices, the warmth of people who have known you long before you knew yourself. It's the moments that ground you, remind you, and gently pull you back to who you always were. And lately, being here in Kyiv, even with all the chaos going on, has made that meaning clearer than ever. Reconnecting with family, sharing meals, stories, going mushroom picking as we are in these clips, has filled me with a happiness I didn't even realize I was missing. There's a special kind of peace in being surrounded by the people who shaped you, a sense that no matter how far you travel, there's a place in the world where your heart fits effortlessly. So maybe that's what home really is, at least to me. Not specifically a destination, but a feeling. One that finds you again in the moment you return back to the people and the memories that love you back. It was about 6 years ago that I first had the thought that maybe I should move back to Kyiv. At the time, I was just starting my full-time journey with YouTube. I was not making that much money. So if I wanted to continue doing it, I knew that I really had two options. One was continue to have my residence in Canada, to use, my mom's address as the place I lived, but not have any sort of apartment or rent on my own because I couldn't afford it. And then any of the money that I actually had would go to travel, would go to paying for accommodation abroad. But obviously I was choosing countries where my dollar stretched a whole lot further. My second option, though, was to choose a less expensive country to live in, such as Ukraine, and which, compared to Canada, is far more centrally located, than having to jump across the Pacific or Atlantic Ocean every single time I wanted to leave the country. So if you've been following my channel for the past 6 years, you will know that I did the latter. I was a full-time nomad for the past 5 years. I didn't have, any sort of fixed address. But that really begins to wear on you. I really became exhausted at the end of those 5 years and knew I had to find some kind of home base. And unfortunately, Ukraine was no longer an option because obviously in 2022, with Russia's full-scale invasion, it really is a complicated situation to be able to make it my home base right now. Outside of the obvious danger of living in a war zone, it's also very complicated to get in and out of Ukraine because obviously you have a 20 to 24 hour train to your first major city and then you have to fly out of there. So for a travel content creator, that's not exactly ideal. Couple that with also blackouts and power outages and heating loss, it's just a very difficult situation to deal with, as well as also a bit of a shaky economy at this point in time. And that is why I ended up choosing Bulgaria, this past year. In many ways, Bulgaria really did check all the boxes that I was looking for, and I'll kind of get more into, the differences, the pros and cons between me potentially living in Kyiv or in Sofia later on in the video. But for this point in time, for sure, Sofia is the better fit while the war is going on. But that's not to say that that may change in the future. In the future, maybe Kyiv will be the better option. And I'll also be doing a cost breakdown later on in this video. Having said that, being back here for the past month has really reminded me just what an amazing city this really is. And once the war is over, guys, I would greatly recommend visiting because there is so much to see and do. It is so cosmopolitan. And I have a feeling that once this terrible and very difficult period is over, tourists will be flocking here because it is truly amazing. But before you come here, one thing that I greatly would recommend you do is download an Airlo eSIM. They are the sponsor of today's video and how I was able to have data when I crossed the border from Hungary
to Ukraine. So if you guys would like to try out Airlo, I will actually have a link in the description so you can download the Airlo app and make sure you use my code Alina3 to get $3 off. In my opinion, it's so incredibly important, especially as a solo female traveler, for safety reasons, to have data as soon as you land, because that way you can look up the directions to your accommodation, you can call a rideshare, which in my opinion is safer than the usual sort of taxis, as well as obviously making any sort of emergency calls. So you will never find me traveling to a new country and not having data. Airlo actually covers over 200 different countries and regions, so you just choose exactly the package you want, and you know that you're not going to get some kind of surprise roaming bill when you get home. So because Airlo is the first and leading eSIM store on the market that is trusted by over 20 million travelers, including myself, I would greatly recommend them, and we'll have a link in the description so you can download the Airlo app and make sure you use my code Alina3 to get $3 off.
So before I get into the cost analysis of Sofia versus Kyiv, which will be at the end of the video, let me first talk about some of the pros and cons of living in either country, at least for my specific situation. So starting with the pros of Bulgaria, it's a huge plus that it is in the EU and just earlier this year entered the Schengen zone. This means that there is immigration-free travel to basically the majority of the countries in Europe, which for a travel YouTuber like myself is fantastic. Sofia also has a really good airport in my opinion, especially for its size. You can get so many inexpensive flights all over Europe, so for somebody who really wants to explore Europe in the coming years, I really couldn't ask for better. Second is the taxes. Bulgaria actually has some of the lowest taxes in the EU, with a flat rate of 10% both corporate and personal. Keep in mind this is without social security, which can actually add up to quite a bit if, let's say, you're just a general employee. But if you have a corporation like myself and are also a non-EU person, so I couldn't even actually contribute to social security that much even if I wanted to, it actually comes out to more or less 17% from my estimates. We'll see after I file my first Bulgarian tax return in this coming year, but that's still substantially lower than anywhere else in Europe or obviously Canada. Also, this next year, Bulgaria will be switching to the euro as currency, which is definitely a lot more stable than the Ukrainian hryvnia. In general, I think Bulgaria is an easier place to do business in Europe, and on top of that, I actually wouldn't really trust Ukrainian banks as much as I trust Bulgarian banks to hold the majority of my company's money. So as far as starting an actual company, I would definitely choose Bulgaria over Ukraine. Now, lifestyle-wise, and especially if the war wasn't going on, that's actually where I would say that Ukraine does take the lead overall. Even though I really like Sofia, it isn't as busy or cosmopolitan as Kyiv is, and that's understandable because Kyiv is more than double its size. Kyiv is also a more beautiful city, you could say, than Sofia, and it just has so much going on. There's a huge range of attractions, shopping, restaurants. It is better than Sofia, but that's not to say that Sofia also doesn't have lots of great qualities. And like Bulgaria, Ukraine also has amazing mountains for hiking and winter sports, as well as the Black Sea coast for summer beach vacations. So traveling around both countries, you can get a range of different natural attractions, and both are really good lifestyle-wise. But one important factor that does come into play in my particular case is that my family is here. Of course, I've made great friends in Sofia in this past year, but at the end of the day, family is family as long as you have a good relationship with them. So, of course, a part of me wants to be closer to my family if possible. But as I said, right now when the war is going on, I wouldn't even think of moving to Ukraine full-time. So Sofia is my clear choice. And business-wise, even in the future when the war ends, I really would have to think twice about moving my whole business over to Ukraine if I had to do that tax-wise. So I'm not sure, to be honest. We'll see how things go. Obviously, I hope the war ends as soon as possible, no matter what choice I end up making. But that's just some other factors that I consider outside of money, of which place would be better to live.
So today I am going to take you guys to my favorite, very budget-friendly but super delicious restaurant. I know many of you will already know what I'm going to say. Fuzata Hata. Direct translation is Fat House, which honestly I think is a great name. Like, whoever thought of that, like, great choice of name. It's a very large chain of Ukrainian kind of cafeteria style restaurants where you can get a fantastic lunch for like $5-6 American. It's very much home cooking style, and I basically come here like 5 times a week. All right, guys, to show you what I got today, and it's great because, you know, they have such a big selection of food. You can always get a whole bunch of different things. I ended up getting just grilled chicken with some grechka, which is buckwheat, super nutritious. I feel like more countries should eat this because it's delicious, as well as a lovely cream pumpkin soup with some pumpkin seeds on top, a sparkling water, and guess how much I paid? Like, this is incredible. 236 grivna, which is, just so you guys can see exactly, almost 8 Canadian dollars and 560 US. So under $6 for this lovely lunch. So just to give you guys a little taste test, I've had this meal a million times, but you know, let's try the soup. In Canada, you'd be lucky to pay just $8 just for the soup. So then we also have the grilled chicken and grechka. Here we go. Very nice. And what's also great is that upstairs they have a cafe where you can get like any kind of drinks, desserts, and all of that is also super budget friendly. It is crazy how dark it is starting to get, guys. It is like 3:30 p.m. and it feels like 5:36. So I better end this video with the cost analysis that I promised you guys, where I'm going to give you a very general sort of example suited to my particular tastes of what it would cost me to live in Sofia. I mean, what it is costing me to live in Sofia right now versus approximately here in Kyiv. So starting with the largest expense that I have, which is obviously rent. I am living in a super fabulous, absolutely love my apartment in Sofia, 2-bedroom downtown apartment, which is professionally furnished. Also keep in mind, professionally furnished, and that is currently costing me 1,000 euros a month. That is definitely on the higher side of a 2-bedroom rent in Sofia. You could find something for like 700, 800, but it's not going to be, you know, as nice. And it's also probably not going to have as good of a location as I have. Here in Kyiv, there also is quite a range depending on whether you want to be right downtown, how nicely it's furnished, all of those aspects. But generally speaking, I was seeing some pretty nice 2-bedrooms downtown or close surrounding area from 30,000 to 50,000 hryvnias, which is approximately $700 to $1,200. In a way, I would actually say that the rent is somewhat similar to Sofia, but you have to keep in mind that Kyiv is a much larger city. Like, you would think that for a city as large as Kyiv, with how many amenities it has, I would actually expect it to be more expensive than Sofia. But moving into the next category, which is utilities, and this one is also hard to, you know, pinpoint exactly because it's going to depend on your particular building, how good the insulation is, because heating is generally what's going to cost the most. In Sofia, in the wintertime, I actually pay like 100 to 150 US dollars a month just for my heating. Thankfully, my electricity and water bill is super low. Like, literally, my water is under $10 a month, and electricity is usually like 30, sometimes even less. But if I average it out into a whole year, because the heating really is for only like 4 to 5 months of the year, I would say that on average, I'm paying about 100 US dollars a month for my utilities in Sofia. But here in Kyiv, using my family's apartment, for example, because it's just slightly larger than my apartment in Bulgaria, it's actually quite similar. They pay about 120, 130 US dollars, but it's a 3-bedroom apartment. So if you kind of cut one of those rooms out, maybe that would bring it down to basically the same. Now, moving into the food categories, this is where things really begin to split, and Ukraine is quite a bit less expensive because if you didn't know, Bulgaria actually doesn't have that inexpensive of food prices. And if I had an average Bulgarian salary, I would be, you know, very worried about my grocery bill because it is super, super high. So right now, on an average monthly basis, I'm paying approximately 250 US dollars for my groceries. Also keep in mind, I am buying some more premium things like really nice fruits, veggies, meats, all of that kind of stuff. And also I do eat out quite a bit. My eating out bill is basically the same as my grocery bill, approximately 250 US dollars. Here in Kyiv, on the other hand, I would estimate that a similar, you know, sort of grocery haul every month would cost me approximately 200 US dollars. So, you know, $50 less than in Sofia. As well as eating out, I think would be significantly less because of places like Puzata Hata that I showed you guys today, where you can get an awesome lunch for like $6 US dollars. There is like nothing like that in Sofia to that level. So even with some nicer places mixed in, I would say that here in Kyiv, I would probably spend maybe 160, 170 US dollars. So quite a bit less than what I would spend in Bulgaria. Now, moving into phone plans and Wi-Fi, that is where both countries actually do exceptionally well, especially compared to what I used to pay in Canada. But in Sofia, I am currently with Vivacom, and I basically have their largest plan of like unlimited data all over Bulgaria and also unlimited Wi-Fi at home, just because I do need to have like really fast speeds to upload all my videos. Those two bundled together, I pay approximately $30 a month. And then here in Kyiv, if you do have a yearly sort of plan, it definitely brings down the price where you could easily get more or less the same thing for like $25. And then moving into transit, that is actually something that I love about both cities, because both have fantastic public transit systems and are incredibly inexpensive. So in Sofia, one ride on public transit costs 1 lev 60 cents, which is about $1 a ride. If you get a monthly or a yearly plan, you can definitely bring down that price. But I find that because I live in the center, I usually actually walk everywhere and maybe only take public transit like 15, 20 times a month, something like that. And then here in Kyiv, it's honestly some of the best public transit that I have used for the price compared to anywhere else in the world. Because get this, here in Kyiv, one ride, and this is even without a monthly or yearly plan, which would bring down the price, it is 8 grivna, which is like 25 US cents. A quarter to take the subway anywhere you want in the city. And then as far as ride shares go, because once again, I do not drive, I do not want to drive, I would approximately spend maybe $40 max a month living in Sofia on transit. Whereas here in Kyiv, I bet you that I would spend like 25, $30 maximum. And then lastly, just to tie everything up, because I don't want this video to be super long, but basically everything else. Whether I want to buy new clothes, things for the home, a gym membership, health insurance, that can obviously be its own whole video, haircut, nails, all of that kind of stuff. All of it, I would say, is at least 15 to 20% less here in Kyiv. So for me and my general sort of budget, I would say that the average that I would spend a month on everything else in Sofia would be like $400, $500, something like that. And I would estimate that here in Kyiv, it would be maybe like 300, 350 max. So in both places, with my privileged position of having a Western, sort of salary that I'm able to earn online, in both cities, I am able to have a very high quality of life for the price that I am paying, at least in my opinion. And with the fact that taxes are approximately, with all things considered, they're quite similar between Ukraine and Bulgaria, what I would pay on a yearly basis, I would actually say that the defining 2 points that it comes down to is the fact that my family is here. Of course, that is, the biggest plus, that I could have my family basically next door and see them whenever I am in the city. And the other large factor for me is the fact that I can get citizenship here. As I mentioned before, starting in January 2026, Ukraine will officially allow dual citizenship. So I'm pretty sure I should be able to get my Ukrainian passport, since I did have one as a child. Whereas in Bulgaria, unfortunately, I will never be able to qualify for citizenship. I will only be able to get PR, which is fine, but that will actually take at least 5 years of being a temporary resident. And in that time, I personally would not feel comfortable buying any sort of property until I was guaranteed that I could stay in a country. So in a way, if I really do feel like I want to buy my own apartment in the next 5 years, and if the war ends in Ukraine, I think it would actually make more sense for me to buy it here in Kyiv, because I am a citizen And I also have my family here so that if I'm not using the apartment, I could actually rent it out on Airbnb and, have my mom look after things, pay her a management fee. And that would actually make a whole lot more sense than me buying an apartment in Sofia and not really having that close family help to be able to manage it. So that is kind of my current thought process, guys. Obviously, it is far too soon to know if I will ever live again here in Kyiv, but with them changing the rules about citizenship and with the war hopefully ending as soon as possible, I really do think Kyiv is an amazing city and I would enjoy living here. Who knows? Who knows what the future will hold? Maybe there will even be some other place that I fall in love with and want to move to instead. For the time being, I do want to be clear that I am absolutely loving my time in Sofia. I have made such an amazing community there, and no matter what happens, I will always be coming back to Bulgaria to visit, and it really does make a lot of sense for my business for the time being. So for now, I am going to try my best to learn some Bulgarian and continue on with my time there. But in the future, who knows? Who knows what will happen? But that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Once again, I want to say a very big thank you to Airlo for sponsoring today's video. I definitely recommend them as my top choice for eSIMs. So if you guys want to try them out, I will have a link in the description, and make sure you use my code Alina3 to get $3 off. But as always, I am sending you guys so much love. Keep being your own kind of beautiful. Bye, guys.